was stationed in Guam. There's a lot of World War II ordnance explosives all in and around Guam, on Guam itself, on the beaches, underwater, in the harbor. So we were diving in the harbor and we were recovering these bombs. If I recall correctly, they were 8-inch rounds. So these bombs that are about this big, about that round and about that long. And each of them weighs about 40 pounds. And a crate of them from World War II had spilled open on the floor of the harbor, Apra Harbor in Guam. And our job was to dive, and we would pick these things up and put them in a big basket that was placed on the bottom by a surface craft. And then after we loaded all these things in the basket and went back to the surface craft would then bring all these bombs up to the surface. And then we would take them out to the range and detonate them, dispose of them. So when it was my turn to dive, my diving partner was somebody I was stationed with for many, many years. His name is Leon. And we were both commissioned officers at the time. We were both what were called limited duty officers. So we were prior enlisted and then became line officers in the Navy. And so it's kind of a joke, oh no, don't get two officers diving together. There's going to be a problem. But Leon and I had a lot of experience. Well, we're in 90 feet of water. The water's fairly clear until we start moving from the pile to the basket. It's about 10 feet. And then a lot of sand and mud and all that starts kicking up. And so the visibility pretty much went to zero. And we were walking past each other. He'd grab one and go, I'd grab one and go. And so we're just kind of moving back and forth. The Navy diving community had just changed to a new valve on our air tank. So we used to have what was called a J valve. And it had this little mechanism that gave you about 300 pounds of reserve air. Well, we switched to something called a K valve, which has no reserve valve at all. And the theory is, hey, you have a pressure gauge, you look at your pressure gauge, and you know when it's time to come up. And the other thing is when you start running out of air, the draw on your regulator becomes a little more restricted. So you know when your air is getting low. So my air was getting low, felt the regulator start to draw a little heavy, looked at my pressure gauge, and the needle moves a lot when you do that inhale and then exhale. And I thought, okay, I'm going to grab one more bullet, drop it in the basket, flip my reserve, and head to the surface. I grabbed that one more bullet, dropped it in the basket, ran completely out of air, went for the reserve, which I didn't have. So I'm in 90 feet of water, completely out of air. I can either go that way, but 90 feet's a long way to go, or I could go that way and look for Leon because we all carry a spare regulator for, emergency situations. And I decided to go look for Leon. And we were wearing full face masks, even though we're diving scuba. And so I went in that direction, and it didn't take but 4 or 5 seconds, and boom, walked right into him. He saw me rip my mask off. I gave the signal. He handed the emergency regulator to me. We hugged each other and went to the surface. Had I decided to go up, it's questionable whether or not I would have made it. So in that moment, I made the right decision. But more importantly, Leon saw I was in peril and immediately provided the assistance that we had been trained to provide and put me in that bear hug and made sure that I made it to the surface.